Here we go. Hi, everybody. It's the 9th day of the candles. This is the last one you have to look at. And today it's Andre Kahr. And I'm sure if you're into the community at all, you've seen Andre. And he does marvelous things with astrology. And that's what we're going to talk about in conjunction with the blue candles. But to get to the blue candles first, I'm going to read the meditation. And if you're doing your own meditation, include it now. And I will go to the candles and start lighting them. Okay. The act of lighting these candles serves as a metaphorical beacon, guiding our spirits up to the next level of existence and fostering deeper connection with the universe. The blue light special upgrade, which is my words for this time, signifies the transformative experience where our spirits become the catalyst for strengthening of universal connections. During this ritual, we can focus our intentions on personal growth, spiritual enlightenment, the aligning of our energies with natural rhythms of the planet. It's a time for introspection, envisioning the desired future, seeking harmony with the world around you, a time to celebrate the growth and balance of the collective. By embracing this ritual, we are acknowledging the interconnectedness of all life on Earth and channeling that awareness to elevate our spiritual journey. It's a beautiful way to celebrate and embrace the cyclical nature of existence while seeking personal and collective growth. I'm going to light the candles. I got wise. I got them on a lazy Susan this time, so I don't burn my fingers reaching over. This is day 1. Day 2. Day 3. Well, I have to go to my backup matches. It sounds like she can find some. Day 3. Day 4. Isn't it lucky this is day 9 because I don't have to light them again. Day 5. And day 6. Day 7. You really want to have fingers at the end of this. So day 8. And day 9. There you go. There's Andre's candle. And this time you won't have to blow them out at the end as long as you're going to stay where they are, because we just let them burn from this point forward. So, and with that, I want to welcome Andre. And you've been having a busy season. Every time I turn my YouTube thing on to, home and feed and subscriptions, there's Andre talking with someone.
Yeah, it's been busy. Very true.
Do you find that's true annually? Everybody's sort of like, it's like tax day on the 14th of April when everybody's doing their taxes. Everybody wants to know what's going on coming into the next year.
Yeah, there's some of that for sure. For sure, the number of people that are in the new year that started setting that up already as early as October, November, and then December. Yeah, it's true. It's definitely true. It's that thing about New Year's resolution and New Year's start and all of that, which is not always tied to the astrology cycles as neatly, but it's understandable. So yes.
It's tied to us changing our numbers, is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that has been the case for sure.
So what do you see in this time? Or I guess I asked you earlier, is there anything astrologically that sort of showed there'd be more energy or light coming into the planet at this time or not? Or is that just
the whole planet? Like everyone?
Yeah, like the big chart.
Yeah, that's it's hard to link that to, oh, sometimes you can, you know, there are
Mhm.
years where, for instance, 2021 had that Saturn Uranus square early in the year, and
Mhm.
kind of see the trouble coming. That's why
Mhm.
things were so edgy, and then we had an insurrection. And this time around, not so much. It's more around the notion that we're going into a year when Pluto will be in Aquarius most of the year, except
Mhm.
for maybe a third of the year. So lots of months in Aquarius.
Mhm.
So we'll see things around that. Like probably the AI thing is going to pick up a lot more technology and all
Yeah.
of that. And we know it's an election year, so that alone we know pretty much, especially with the climate we're in,
Mhm.
that it's going to be super intense that way. And that I tie more though to the individual people that are
Yeah.
involved, because you can see what they're doing to them. So, you know, we know that right now we've got two different wars going on where a lot of people have strong feelings and you know, about what is happening. And I would say both, though. My feeling is that both of those will improve next year. You know, the situation will get better. I don't know how exactly, but my feeling is that there will be major progress made on both
Yeah.
fronts. Yeah.
I think Ukraine has gone on much longer than any of us. Of course, a lot of it is just our feeling. We didn't want to watch a war go on that long, but there it is. But that resolutions are coming towards it because much of what's been sustaining it is unsustainable.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Well, uh, I'm optimistic, you know, cautiously, because these things, they never give you a utopian outcome. You know, things
no,
improve somewhat. And so, I mean, if anything, really my advice to people for 2024 is put on your seatbelt, you know, be
mhm,
secure, because be ready to withstand a certain amount of pressure, because I think it's going to be there in
mhm,
24. So, yeah. And I'm not saying it's going to be a terrible year or anything, but it's still that kind of year. But it'll be entertaining though. I'm pretty sure
oh yeah,
you'll be quite tuned in and see all kinds of very interesting things. But the pressure is there for sure. And then
yeah,
beyond that, you and I were talking about how there are those bigger cycles that are taking place, but they span more into the following year, the year after that. We're in that zone when lots of planets that have been in a sign for years and years are switching to another
like,
sign. And that's how
like
astrology works. When those planets move, social forces go along
like our
with them.
248 years of Pluto finally making back around. Yeah.
Well, Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008, so that's
Hmm.
going to be about a 17-year cycle, and now it's going to be in Aquarius for 20 plus years. Neptune since 2011, switching to Aries in 2025, 2026. Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018, will switch to Gemini in 26. So that's the three, main outers. That's when you see the, social changes. But the thing is, if you go back to 2011 or 2008, or even 2018. 2018 maybe a little more. 2018 was one of the things was with Uranus and Taurus, the rise of crypto and that kind of thing, because Uranus is rebellious to the sign that it's in, and so you can get that, counterforce energy to the established norms, and crypto is like that. But really, any of these switches, you can't really tell right away. You have to let it get in there and take over the domain, so to speak. So people who say, "Oh, I'm just going to watch," as soon as the planet changes, that's it. I'll know what it's about. You'll know a little bit if you're lucky,
Hmm.
like when Pluto last year, or this year rather, it was in Aquarius briefly for about 2+ months, and that was when the AI thing really broke out, and that's
Hmm.
a signal, that it's probably that in part, but there's more than that as well. It's not the only thing that you'll see
Yeah.
with Pluto there, obviously, because it's such a long span of time. So,
Yeah, I know. I watched when Uranus went into my birth sign, and I've got a lot of planets in Taurus, and I watched it kind of cruise through there. I
mm,
can't, I don't know. People were like, "Oh, it's Uranus and it's such abrupt changes and all this stuff." I didn't find it did that much. I did dye my hair purple, but other than that.
Well, that's a Uranian move, you know. It's pretty Uranian. If
Well,
someone,
there it is, guys.
yeah, and it can be Uranus cycles though, especially the conjunctions, the squares and oppositions, they can be quite sharp around something important that
Mhm,
switches gears, and sometimes very quickly too. You just get this thing and then boom, you know, you get
mhm,
propelled into a new dimension. But also more to the sun, for example, than to other planets. And if it's the softer aspects, sometimes all you experience is the psychology of independence and the, you know, psychology of being more, you know, centered on yourself in an easy way, but you won't necessarily see anything
mhm.
show up in your life.
Well, thank God. I mean, if the worst that happens is purple hair, then we're good.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. Yeah.
I've also heard that there's going to be a period, well, it really starts the 1st of January, with the exception of Uranus, which is still going retrograde. Don't all the planets go direct for until into April?
I think they do. Yeah, definitely. Well, Mercury for sure early in the year. The Uranus cycle has been doing this thing where it's in the early part of the year that it backtracks and from
Mhm,
its retrograde point, and then it goes forward.
mhm,
And I think Eris does the same thing. So yeah, that's true. And then they do another round, you know, then in the spring you get another set of
mhm,
stations. Those stations tend to be very important because whenever the planets are either going into the retro or coming out of the retro, that's when they're most intense. That was why in 2021, Uranus was in a station in January when we had the insurrection, because it's you know, really edgy. The energy
mhm,
rises, and Uranus is the idea of let's take down the government, you know, and the government being Saturn in all cases, and it was square
mhm.
Saturn. So if you know your chart and you know the degrees, stations near your planets are a lot more important, always. You know, they have more oomph um,
Yeah, they
in the way
put
they
more of
manifest.
what their energy puts on you. But what I'm looking forward is to those months where everything's going forward and nothing's booping back on me.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that is, I mean, all I can say to that is that always remember the central tenet in Buddhism, which is that everything is impermanent. So no matter what you get, it's a, you know, temporary thing, and then you get something else, and then I mean, this is a persistent. Life is like a roller coaster that
Mhm,
way. So not that I'm saying to someone, hey, you should always be tense, you know, waiting for the next problem, but expecting things to remain smooth for too long, you know, it's probably a little unrealistic.
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
kind of like the idea that all the good big guys are pushing in one direction, even if it's,
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And certainly for some people more than others too, because there are people for whom the 24 cycles are really hard, really challenging, you know, people that most of your viewers and mine really dislike, which is a good thing because
Mhm,
you get a sense that perhaps they're, you know, running into some accountability. You know, the ex-mayor of New York is an example of
mhm,
why it's not a good idea to in a capitalist society to behave the way he behaved, because you can be sued, and a number of others as well. But then there are also, for many people, it will help them a lot. Like, for example, one of the reasons I say about the war in Ukraine is that Zelensky, and I have to think it's probably correct, his time is out there 2 p.m., so he's Gemini rising. That benefits a lot from the Jupiter and Gemini cycle that'll
mhm,
happen starting in the middle of the year. So that's an upsurge for someone
mhm,
like him. It helps, you know, Jupiter through your ascendant, really good energy, really useful, helpful energy, especially when you're a public figure.
mhm,
So I tend to do most of my astrology actually is not world events you know, in a broad sense. I read it through the individuals
mhm.
that are involved, because that's always been my specialty is individual charts, you know, rather than the big cycles, which also can be very revealing, but I'm less familiar, you know, with the historical and the research and the whole bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is one thing I'm going to do my pitch again. if you get it from Andre or from another astrologer, go get a good personal chart and get a little bitty grasp of kind of where things are. So when people float out words like Gemini ascendant, that happens to be you, you can go, yay, yay, good for me. You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. No, and it, by the way, I mean, the thing is that as long as you are either a good citizen or you're striving to be one in a reasonable way, or even if you're having a really hard time and you're having trouble changing whatever you're trying to change or improve, as long as your intentions are reasonable, even challenging cycles are not a problem. They're actually very useful. You can grow the most through them. And it's often helpful to have an astrologer tell you, look, this is happening from here to here. Apply yourself in this way, and you can get a lot of it. So there are no bad cycles or bad moments to get that kind of insight and then be able to apply it right through the cycles. But this obviously isn't going to work for someone like Kevin McCarthy or MTG. They don't live in that universe. They don't think that they're in cycles. They just keep doing the same thing, and they'll never check into such things.
well, they just think if they pedal harder, they can make their planets move faster, and it doesn't work that way.
I guess, sure. But I mean, no, it doesn't work that way at all. No. Yeah, no, not even close. No, for sure.
No.
Yeah. So that's the logic of astrology, as I understand it, is that a portion of your life is fated for sure, but an even larger portion is related to what you're doing. And your job, in quotes, is to become more skillful at what you're doing, which is nothing other than understanding what planets seek to express when you figure them out. And when you do, then your energy changes, and then your vibe, your depending on if you say it visually, you'd say your aura energy changes. If you say it from the perspective of sound, your vibe, your vibration. And then if you say it from feeling, you give people a different feeling. People pick up something different. All of that has consequences for your fate. And most people understand that intuitively, but they may not necessarily do a lot about it. They may do a little bit, maybe they'll do a little more. The more you do about that, the better, particularly when you know where your cycles are, so that you can then maximize the return. You figure out a way to line up. Like if you know Jupiter is coming in next year, what happens between now and then is really important, because then you reach that point and the joy and the clarity and the expansion you get from Jupiter is a lot more pure, because you understand that you did something. So it really empowers you. It has this quality that you've really grown. If you do nothing, you'll still say, yeah, that was pretty good. Jupiter went in there. That's when the pressure went off, whatever. But there's more of a sense that you're treading water through your life rather than, really growing and expressing your creativity and, feeling more fulfilled as a result. So this is why I call my astrology proactive rather than predictive. And it's not to be, not because I thought I liked the moniker. I really believe that. I believed it for decades, that it's much more important to focus on that and still predict cycles. The cycles, they're there. There's no escaping them. But it's what you do with the cycles that counts, right? That's the key.
I think when people start to really look at their astrology and try to figure out, this has been my experience being around people when they cross that river, go over and start looking, that they begin to understand more about how much of their soul and what's inside them and how it gets expressed outside. It's not, the stars are in ourselves and not in, your fate's in yourself and not in your stars. But the stars can say, it's like a road map. It's like I say, I'm going to drive to Chicago. But if I don't have any idea what roads are there or, what's on the way, it's tough. So if you use astrology like kind of a road map and say, this is going to make things better. And it's better to drive around Illinois in June than it is in January.
Yeah.
And you just have those kind of signs. It's the same sort of practical thing, but it's for what's inside of us and the energy that we came in with and how to best live with it. Because I know when I was 30, in my 30s, I took a formal astrology class, and Helen had me draw the transit chart of the day I got married the first time. And let me put it to you this way. If there was ever a chart that every planet that was in transit compared to the planet I was born with, if there was a giant chart that said clueless across the top of it, you had no idea where you were. It was that chart. And that was one of the ones that kind of revealed to me, oh, maybe I'd have been better if I'd have been talking to someone with a little more guidance and a little more wisdom, you
Yeah.
know. But when
Yeah.
your mother picks the day of your wedding because it's more convenient for her friends to attend, astrology's kind of thrown out the window.
Yeah, yeah, you can definitely say that. That's 100% true. But then that's often how we learn too, because sometimes the greatest learning is from maybe always is from remembering, putting your hand on the stove and realizing, oh, that's hot. I better not do that again. And so then, as long as you don't become fearful, you just become wise to your mistakes. It's okay. The past is the past. You just go from where you are
Mm-hmm.
and you try to do it better. But knowing the cycles, yeah, it's really helpful because
Mm-hmm.
many times, for instance, a person can really increase their sense of suffering if they're in a difficult jam and they don't know that it has a time span.
Mm-hmm.
So if all they did is just sit under a tree and wait for the planet to move, they will feel better. I mean, it's better to make a decision then, than to do it when you're in the midst of the planetary hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one example where you're not going to know that if you don't know your chart
Mm-hmm.
patterns. Yeah, for example.
And I think what from what I've gained from listening to the eight days before you and the blue light is that people are becoming aware that there's a lot of deeper things going on out there that maybe they should be listening to, paying attention to, and not falling into the, oh, I'm going to tear my hair out every day because it's that awful. There's no reason to do that.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I mean, in that way, we live in an amazing era of tremendous information flow, but the drawback is too much information. So there's this, it takes on this quality of distractions,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I admit, if I'm not careful, because I like sports, I start to work and, oh, I'll watch this, tennis, something that, oh, then I'll watch a soccer video. Then, pretty soon, not only am I not working and getting the job done, but my mind is getting more scattered. So you have to apply boundaries. That's probably one of the most difficult things for human beings, that, there's no unlimited energy. There's no sense, sense that you can do whatever you want. Not exactly. If you live that way, it's hard to progress. That's, for example, the teaching of Saturn, where it's always reminding you, you gotta set up good limits and follow
Mm-hmm.
them, and then you can get something to happen in your life, right? And
Right.
at the moment, it can mean tapering down, for instance, being on YouTube and or social media. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. You could start up a computer or a phone or a tablet, and you don't do anything the rest of the day or most of the day.
Right. Well,
That's not good.
and the worst is cell phones can go to bed with you at night.
Yeah.
So if you wake up distracted at night, oh, well, I'll just look for a minute. Maybe it'll calm me down. Trust me, nothing you're going to see at 3 a.m. is going to calm you down.
No, no. It's very true. It's very true. So I
Not
mean,
even.
this might go to maybe you could say that a central tenet is to develop that self-awareness, to know that you're doing
Mhm.
it, and then be able to pull back, something like that.
Well, even I find that if I'm up at 3 a.m, I'm already agitated. So even if I pick up one of the nice talk you back to sleep meditations, about 10 minutes in, I'll go, I don't like that guy's voice. Something's wrong here. And
Yeah.
finally, I just had to learn it. I had to learn to just breathe and get myself out of it, because no matter what hits the nerves that are on your head when you're stoked at a point of pressure like that. And I'm I'm older than you, Andre. I'm older than probably a lot of people listening to this. And you know, it was bad enough going through, and I went through Watergate because I was a young adult and I worked in a public broadcasting station. And I not only got to see all the Watergate hearings once, I got to hear them twice, because I had to watch during the daytime. And then we figured out where we were going to put the breaks. And then I had to watch it during the evening to put my volunteers to work doing pledge breaks. I guess I did develop those hideous things called pledge breaks at night. And so I got to know about the whole thing. And that was my first time of really, except when Kennedy was killed and there was nothing else on the TV. That was my first time of having that kind of intense, having to focus on something. And I had to do it for a living. But it, and when it was over, I was like, I wiped that out of my mind. Matter of fact, I met John Dean once. I was helping with a luncheon that he was giving. He was signing books and giving them away at this luncheon. And my partner who was with me said, "Oh, Nancy sat through all the Watergate hearings twice." And he looked and he said, "What was wrong with that woman?" And she said, "What was her job? She had to." So he came over and he said, "Are you Nancy?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, my darling, for you to have gone through that." And I just laughed and we talked about what I observed in the hearings. Like his now still wife, Maureen, was sitting bolt straight behind him. They weren't married at the time. And she sat there behind him through his whole testimony. And we talked about that. And so there's going to things you're going to carry away from doing those sorts of experiences, but there's also, God, that's a lot of hours to have. If you think about your whole life, what percentage of it you spent because Tricky Dick wasn't as tricky as he thought,
Yeah. Well, that happened with the thing in 2022. That long, the January 6th committee. They did a lot, but it was fascinating. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I didn't want to be in it.
It was fascinating because we could finally hear what we thought was going on, but everybody kept saying, "Oh, that's not going on." All of a sudden, you had hours after hours after hours of people coming in and saying, "No, if you thought like a reasonable human being, you realize what was going on." And that's what I think we're looking for now. When you said accountability is one of the things that we're looking for kind of in these times, I think that's part of it. And I think that's what people come to me and they'll want me to do a reading and they'll say, "Tell me how it's going to work." And I'll go, "I can tell you what energies and agencies I see around it, but how it's going to work depends on you."
Yeah, it's true. Very true. Very true. 100%. Undoubtedly. Yeah. And although of course, I mean, that there on a personal level, as difficult as it may be, far, far easier than, can you imagine if Rudy Giuliani asked me for advice? What am I going to tell the guy? My first thing would be, I've been watching, it's too late, man. But I don't know.
If a choice looks like one you've made before, don't make it again.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are points of no return. I mean, if you push enough, you leave yourself at the mercy of bigger forces, and it's much, much harder, to backtrack.
Well, they tend to look like Greek tragic figures sometimes, they're making the ultimate hubris, to think that they're going to speak louder than what the reality is, which I guess would be the gods in the Greek tragedies. And it all blows my mind away. That's why I got out of politics, guys. Because
isn't that the myth of, was it Icarus that flew too close to the sun? You often get this feeling that these guys have this, this sense of entitlement, this sense of, again, no boundaries. But society has boundaries. Society needs boundaries in order to stay functional. And so if you keep challenging those boundaries, you are, good odds you'll be pushed back. Problems. So for good, and I think it's fair. It's good that it would be that way. Otherwise, life would be even more unfair than it seems at times, right? So, yeah.
Well, we have a statement in Texas. The state fair is the month of October. So the only time that Texas is fair is in the month of October. That's the only time that word has a meaning here. Otherwise, it's what you do with it and how you work with it that makes it go.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And that's the curious thing that's behind or together with what I think of as astrology wisdom is understanding what to do and how to be, because the planets reveal that. It's there. It's like, for example, I mean, a really obvious example, if someone has a very strong Mars and they report anger problems, well, then they usually know. I mean, maybe they don't know right away, but at some point in their life, they realize, this isn't really working very well because I have this anger thing. Things aren't really working for me. So then you have to work on that in order to channel that in a different way. And then when that gets conquered, that's one way to put it, understood, learned, use whatever word you like, then that part of your chart becomes an asset, your vibe changes, and this is where that person may be the one writing the book on the problem because they had to deal with it, or some other thing that they do. Point being, this is a way that now your chart is moved up a level and it works in a different way and you get a different fate. And there'll be other points in the chart, sometimes more subtle. I mean, sometimes a person may not know. I mean, there are people that, for instance, you see a harmonic that tells you they're very creative, but they don't really believe it. If you tell them, look, oh yeah, well, I guess I am, but no, you are. Really, you are. You just have to start believing it because it's true. The astrologers don't make this up. If you see it there, it is true. It's just that depending on many forces in your life, the other planets and the whole thing, it may take longer to bring them out, but they're there, to bring, and then your life will improve. That's the logic, and it involves you personally.
Yeah, I've known a lot of creative people and they were incredibly creative, but they wouldn't take the time to be creative, or they wouldn't take the time to learn their craft.
Right.
What they needed to do. They just wanted, and there are some people who kind of walk into what appears to be instant fame. There's prodigies and all that, but all of us aren't, but that doesn't mean we can't learn and literally craft what we need to handle and work with.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very true. It's in the words of my spiritual teacher in the 20th century, he used to say, awaken your soul from its slumber, awaken yourself and start doing what you were meant to do, because that's what brings you happiness, when you make that contact. If you're not there, then everything is low key, you don't quite feel fulfilled. So that's really the only motivation that counts, because if you're doing motivation for more, mundane reasons, it'll last a while, but it won't stick if it doesn't come from your core. So finding that is really helpful.
And I think if people, like I said, if you've been listening to the other 9 candles, that's what people have been talking about, how it's kind of giving people's spirit an extra light, an extra push, an extra feeling at this time, like, it's like a scratch inside of your body and it's just got to come out. And you can either, how you can suppress it with cough syrup and try to keep it down with all of the other ways we have of ignoring our real feelings, or let them come out. They're not nearly. I've never finally faced and worked with something I felt awkward with doing. Once I finally just worked with it, maybe I didn't do it 100%, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and probably you can things like that. When a person will say, "Well, I did such and such between here and here," there'll be a cycle that will explain that, and that can also encourage you, because, say, for instance, someone says, I don't really like Saturn. Oh, they mentioned some difficult period, but then you might ask another couple of questions and you discover something they did that was really important, self-empowering on a Saturn cycle. So then you point out, no, that planet is trying to help you, because look what happened there. You made a move. So then this is why you can redeem it. You can use it, right? By knowing that there's an opportunity there. It's not a thing trying to harass you or to make you uncomfortable, maybe a little uncomfortable. I mean, Saturn is not exactly the easiest one, but knowing how to use it is really important. Or take Jupiter, which is the great benefactor, and it's almost always a happy energy. Yes, but if you're not careful, you could use the energy to really indulge yourself, and then you do too much of things. And then when the cycle passes, you're left with debt, you're not as fit. I mean, things like that, where you realize you kind of misused it. So it's good to know where you are in order to be wise, right, about it.
Right. And I think at the end of the day, the cycles teach us moderation. I had a friend, she would never call Mercury retrograde. She used to say, is Mercury in Gatorade again? Everything went wrong. She was sure Mercury was out to get her. And then God help me, when the day she learned about Saturn returns, she was like, "Oh, when's that going to happen?" And I said, "You go through those cycles so that you can expand and contract. And those contractions, a lot of times when Mercury's retrograde, it's giving you a chance to rethink, redo, reassess. And that's important. I mean, you just can't dash forward in your life and never look back and see what you did behind you."
Correct. Yeah, that's 100% correct. If Mercury's retrograde now, it's a great time to catch up on things you know you need to do, to bring some order into your life, for example. Any kind of research, especially if you are going to do something important, it's generally not 100%, but like 90 plus better to spend the period researching, studying it, and then making the move on the direct period, because then you'll have covered everything. And I can tell you that works because sometimes I've done experiments where I'll look at something that I think, okay, I think I want to get this because this will help me. I'm going to buy it. And then I'll think, no, wait, Mercury's retrograde, hold off. And then a few days later, I realized it wasn't the thing. It was clearly, there was something better or something that now I prefer to that. Right? So it's a consistent thing that shows up. So after a while, you respect that. But if a person then says, well, no way to get around that, I have to sign some papers, contract, and it's in the middle of Mercury retrograde and you can't avoid it, well, then the solution is to just be more attentive, check everything out thoroughly, and it'll still be okay. At worst, you might have to redo one or two things, but it means just being more careful, right? Rather than assuming that
my experience with that is the universe makes a point of saying, paragraph C, that needs to be relooked at, I used to pay taxes. I have a master's in business. I used to be a tax accountant, and I've been 100 million jobs. And they all taught me that it's usually not right the first time. Everything can be looked at again.
Yeah, it's true.
And how to figure it out. So
yeah, very true.
Anyway, so 2024, I have a feeling it's a lighter year. I just have, and this has, I don't know where, well, I know where my planets are, but I don't know that they're sending me that signal. I'm just going with it. I'm just going with something's feeding that to my feelings. But and I know you look at individual patterns or groups of people that might be working with something against the planets. But I get the gist from seeing you speak recently several times that that's how you're feeling about things too.
That I'm feeling what?
That things are, for some people, things are not going up, but for other people, for a lot of people, things are going to seem to improve.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, it's a bit always like that. So yeah, but certain people, it's easier. You can see this pattern, for instance, in the astrology. I'll notice that when Saturn switches signs, then the signs that are affected are four different signs. So it goes from up to 2023 in the spring. So 21, 22, spring of 23, that was Taurus, Leo, Aquarius, and Scorpio, because Saturn was in Aquarius, so it was challenging the four corners. Then it switched to Pisces, Sagittarius, Gemini, and Virgo. And even though that doesn't cover everybody, of course, but it'll cover a greater number of those people. So I'll see more of those people looking for charts, because when Saturn introduces pressure, they're wondering what's going on. So then I'll see more of those signs. Then in 2025, 2026, then it'll be the cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer, because that's what then Saturn goes into to challenge. Right? So that's a sense of, in broad strokes, those kinds of changes. But everybody is different. There's no way to get around. Either have someone look at your chart or study your own chart. I mean, be your own astrologer, right? When I got into this, I would do this even if I never talked to anyone about it, because I find it so rich and so amazing, to, in a sense, experience the universe, well, at least the solar system part of it.
Yeah, we're not going into galactic astrology. We'll leave that to your sister.
Yeah, we're doing This is like, that's what, it's one of the ironic things about this, because people will say, oh, you're doing astrology. These planets are so far away. How can that make any sense? And if they realized how tiny, tiny, tiny the solar system is,
Mm-hmm.
with the astrology, I mean, you're doing astrology of a corner of your backyard relative to the immensity of the galactic,
Mm-hmm.
just the galaxy, never mind the fact that there are 2 trillion galaxies out there, according to scientists, right? So
Right. And it
pretty soon
keeps,
your head explodes if you think trying to do universal astrology. What is that? You're doing solar system astrology, basically. That's as far as you need to go. You don't need to go
that's,
any further to get all
don't
kinds of
need,
wisdom.
don't need to go any further, and consider yourself lucky. Andre and I started back in the days where there were no computers drawing charts.
Mhm.
I have a drawer full of hand-drawn charts that I did.
Yes, true.
And, and every once in a while I'll look at it and I'll go, and Andre's a whiz with an ephemeris. He can read it like nothing I've ever seen. I have a friend in politics who reads demographic charts. They do the same thing with demographic charts. They go through and they follow the patterns and they can see them like you can. And so far, for the most part, they've been right.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
it's all practice, really. I mean, not too many things out there that if you don't practice, if you practice, you'll get better.
mm-hmm,
And I never, I never saw astrology as work from the beginning. For me, it's I can get absorbed and spend either within my own mind or looking at the ephemeris or
mm-hmm.
studying something. Time just disappears as I get into it. So then, after lots of that, the skill improves. Right?
And then people will say, how can you just build a grid out of crystals? And you go, it took a long time and complete and utter concentration on that issue, which crystal means what and how does it feel for you?
Right. Yeah.
And that's how charts are. And
Mhm.
there's so many good ways to get charts, but I cannot tell you hard enough from my life experience, and I'm an old lady. Um, I'll be 75 next May.
Mm.
So my feeling is that you can learn so much, and it can make things that other people might think are frightening, they're not. They're just, this is sort of a time limit. I sort of liked having fences, and saying, these are the boundaries of where things are, and this is a good time frame for it, and this is a bad. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. That's wise. What you just said. Very wise.
So, well,
Because
I'm supposed to be wise. I've lived 74 years. I hope I got something out of it.
yeah, well, not always age. I had a mentor when I was 20 years old, and he said to me, Andre, there are people that have 20 years experience, and there
Mm-hmm.
are people that have 1 year's experience 20 times, and you need to know the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, 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 yes.
So,
I've in our collective community, you see a lot of that.
yeah, well, this is the thing, right? That if
But
experience is really experience, really powerful, but if you keep
mhm,
repeating the same pattern and you're not really growing through it, then it's not the same. It's not the
yeah,
same.
and people who live in fear, it's face everything and you can recover, or F
Mhm.
everything, and I'm not going to say that word because then they'll demonetize me. F everything and run. And the problem is you can never outrun fear. So, you're just best to just put on your boots and realize astrology is a good way to come to terms with things you might. And for me, it's not that I fear anything anymore. It's I might have trepidations or I might have concerns on how something's going to come out.
Mhm.
But I, try to help with that. And you've got me past another one of my fears. I'm finishing the 9 candles tonight.
Oh, nice,
It's
nice.
just, oh my God. And is everybody going to be where they're supposed to be and doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Uh,
You know,
well,
yeah.
thanks for making me number 9, because the 9 is a really, you know,
We're at the end.
mysterious.
We're almost at the completion. Actually, it
Yeah,
is completion. 10
yeah,
is
it
it's
is.
done.
Yeah, 9. No, 9 is it's why what's behind the 40 days in the desert, or 40 people talk about 40 is
Mhm.
1/9 of the circle. It's a ninth harmonic angle, and it's something to be experienced when two planets are in ninth harmonic and they affect your chart. Say one of your planets gets a ninth harmonic from something, you feel the peaceful, happy energy, of it. Even if at times depending on all the other planets surrounding it, it may only be an oasis within a turbulent period, but it has the chance to bring in that happiness and you feel complete, you feel whole in the ninth harmonic.
The
So
ninth
that's why,
inning of a baseball game.
yeah,
The you just brought up something. When you do hit an oasis spot, and when you do hit a place where you can feel happy and you can say, I'm content, I've completed this, I'm happy with kind of where things are. Don't immediately. I was raised in an Irish household, and the second everything would get calm and quiet, and we were all sitting around, we're having a good time, my mother'd say, but wait, it's coming. And you're like, oh, it was so nice for the 10 seconds that we had peace and community here. So don't do that. Don't borrow that trouble from another place.
of course, yeah, of course, it's true. Although, thing is that you could also say something like, you enjoy it, but enjoy it so that you have confidence in that calm energy. Should there be a future moment when things get more tense, draw upon that
Right.
ability to stay calm so that now your reaction is different. Otherwise, as soon as the conditions change, whenever that is, then you're catapulted back again into your fears or your anger, or, and that's not good. That would be,
No,
yeah. So that the whole
no,
idea is to
it's
remember,
part of it. Learn that this can come and remember it was here, but at
right.
least stay in it long enough so you have a memory of it.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, a lot of people will say that some memory of, and that's where memory is really useful. Memory has a lot of counterproductive qualities, but a memory of something that was very stabilizing, that you really understood, calling upon that, drawing upon that can be really useful to get yourself through a period that is, a little bit more challenging, right? And it's sort of
Right.
that logic that at some point it'll hit you that if something is challenging, staying calm is the most important thing, because your reaction can make it worse and it'll extend the pain. And after a while you realize, well, there's no point in that, so you just don't do it like that anymore. You do it
Yeah.
in a new way, yeah, which would be, in that sense, would be like embodying the number 9. Because, that's why I think that's why the Beatles had, remember that song Number 9? I thought that was funny. Someone must have told them, this is a really powerful number, and they were young and so forth, and John Lennon thought it would be something interesting to make an entire track repeating the idea of number 9.
He had a life that had a lot of number 9s in it, so
Yeah,
but
exactly.
and with that, I think we'll kind of end it, because you're talking about my favorite singer. I saw the Beatles when they were really the Beatles, when they were all on one stage 3 times. Yay! You got to be old to have memories like that. So,
Yeah, that goes
and
back to the 60s.
I want everyone to have a happy holiday season. Today is the solstice. This is when this will be aired, is on the solstice day, and it's when the sun says, "Okay, I'll make the days longer again. I'm tired of playing," you know. And it's all, I guess the bottom line on the candles is it's all about cycles. It's all about us understanding cycles. And sometimes the cycles get a little oomph, and people say blue light's coming in, and some people it'll light them up and it'll make them aware the cycles are coming in. For other people, it make them understand they're happy they live to see another cycle. But I'm just happy to have had one more opportunity to talk with everyone who's listening to the show, and one more chance to talk with Andre, because that's always delightful.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Likewise.
Namaste to everyone. Have a good holidays. Bye.
Everyone.